everyone, and welcome.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to another episode of Minnesota Medleys. I'm still Travis.
I continue to be Jess.
Very good.
Yeah.
And for that, I am very, very grateful.
Thanks.
Say, we have an exciting episode today.
Yeah.
A first for us. We have an author.
We do.
A Minnesota author.
Indeed.
A Minnesota author by the name of Don Carr.
So specific.
It is. And we've never interviewed an author before.
No, and this was a total blast.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing more authors in the future.
Yep.
We actually were contacted a while back by Janelle, who is a literary publicist with Blue Cottage Agency.
Thank you so much for reaching out to us, Janelle.
Thank you, Janelle. She and Krista are literary publicists with Blue Cottage Agency. Check them out, bluecottageagency.com, representing and promoting literary arts. Without them, we wouldn't have ended up on this path, and we're very, very grateful to them. And of course, to Don for sitting and chatting with us. One thing, I made a boo-boo during our interview. I need to watch my language.
Yeah.
During the interview, I think I said tomorrow his book was being released. At the time of this recording,
you just really want people to get their hands on it. I really
want that. Okay, what it comes down to is the book release party is on the 19th of this month of December. The 19th, from 4 to 6 p.m. at Terzo in Minneapolis, a lovely Italian restaurant at 2221 West 50th Street. We'll mention that again to make sure you know that. But at one point, I'm pretty sure I said the wrong date or might have misled people. And that's just not like me.
No, and I'm sure the restaurant would appreciate the extra business.
Sure. Yeah, you can
go there the next
anytime.
week, too. Yeah. I mean, just keep going back to them.
But we had a great conversation with Mr. Carr, and we won't take up any of more of your time right now.
You got to listen
to
this
guy.
Check it
out, Don Carr,
All right.
and enjoy. All right, as promised, we are here with Don Carr, who's got a new book called The Midnight Rambler, coming out on the 19th of December. And we welcome you, Mr. Carr. Thanks for doing this with us.
Hey, thanks so much, you guys. I really appreciate it. And great podcast. I'm super grateful to be a guest on it.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Very, very kind of you to say. When Janelle with Blue Cottage Agency got a hold of us and said, we represent some, work with some Minnesota authors, is that we were just, yes. And she did that in an email, and I actually found a way to interrupt her in an email. We were that down with speaking to you. And I'm really glad we're starting with you. We, of course, are going to discuss the book as much as you're willing to discuss it. Yeah. But you've got a really very interesting history of employment, as it were. People can read about what you've done at your website, doncarrauthor.com, and I highly recommend people visit it.
Yes.
Some really interesting. Go under stuff and get to videos and be entertained.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you deal with is very, very serious.
Yep.
So when we checked it out and found humor that was also relevant, that was really that says a lot about you and who you are and that kind of thing. So we appreciate that, and we encourage people to check it out.
Yeah.
Your history with journalism? Have you always been on an environmental trail, as it were?
That's a good question. And real quick, I want to say at the top, you talk about the humor and the way that I've, put the videos up on the site. One of the things, in quote unquote, for better or worse, calling the environmental movement. Yeah. And especially doing communications in the movement, that those of us that talk about it or write stories about it or do investigations about it, it's just very somber, very sober, and for right reasons.
Definitely.
Discipline. And so I just kind of want to find a way to, maybe tell stories that were a little lighter, even though it's a very dark subject. So that's the kind of way I lean into that.
Absolutely.
And the novel is kind of in that vein. It's not a very, it's obviously a serious book about, serious issues, but, I approach it more like kind of this Michael Bay kind of thing. Like, I really want to be over the top with it and not have these kind of same, like, very just, modest, somber things that talk about the environment. But to answer your question, I've written about, it's funny. I grew up in South Dakota, and I was in debate in high school, and the national debate topic was water quality. And so from that time on, I've kind of had it in my, just in my back pocket. And you grow up in a state like either Minnesota or South Dakota, you spend a lot of time outside enjoying natural resources and the things that we all love about where we grew up, where we live. And so threats to that, kind of hit at an emotional level. And then, did the thing where you bounced around the world and all the kinds of things, then got into the political world and did some campaigns. And then I got recruited to go work for the Environmental Working Group in Washington, D.C. Because they were working on the Farm Bill at the time and how to kind of like look at the way agriculture and the pollution from agriculture was addressed in the Farm Bill, but they didn't have someone kind of from farm country that could talk about it. So they kind of pulled me in to do that kind of communications. And that's when I really fell into writing, investigating, pursuing different environmental issues, and really it became a passion. So I've either done it for national environmental groups, like I said, for EWG, or the Environmental Defense Fund, or Earth Justice. In Minnesota here, I did a lot of work for Honor the Earth up north of Minnesota. And so it's always been something I've written about for Green Angle. Though I will say, one of my early, as I've always been writing in my whole life, one of my early dreams was to be a Rolling Stone music reviewer, because being a music fan, but being unable to play even a note or carry a tune, the only thing those that can't do teach, so those that can't play, criticize music. And
sure.
I'll become a critic.
My dream would be to write Rolling Stone music reviews. So I did get the kind of dream job, although it didn't pay very well, but I did get a dream job by 5 years in Washington, D.C., and I wrote for the Washington, D.C. City paper about music and movies. And so that's kind of the only other time I've stepped outside the environmental world, but mostly it's always been green stuff.
Okay. Interesting that you bring up the thing about music, because when I quick went to type in your name online, and shortly after Don Carr guitarist, your name came up. So, there is someone out there named Don Carr who is in the music world.
So you're music adjacent, apparently, in Google searches? Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I love how you kind of caught what you ended up doing. You really, as far as through debate and everything, it just became quite a bit about who you are and what you stand for, and then to kind of have the opportunity to delve further into it with journalism, I think is just it's fascinating to me that you get to do what you love, and it's something that you are passionate about as well. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice for you to say it. And I will say this, the different groups I've worked with and different people I've worked with, it really is a privilege. It is. I'm lucky to have been able to do this work, and I just feel like I was given a gift to be able to talk about these kind of issues. And, the sad part about it is when you work in environmental stuff, and I talk about this with my colleagues or people I've worked for, we're losers. We lose a lot. And so you have to look in the mirror and be able to get up every day and we lost that one, but maybe today.
Yes, exactly.
So.
Well, I'm guessing there's really no shortage of battles.
Yeah.
You're not going to run out of, unfortunately, you've got just a ton of job security.
So true.
I was going to ask you, when you've written for Sierra Magazine, Politico, Huffington Post, that kind of thing. Have you ever, in your writing, you're investigating that kind of thing? Have you found yourself in precarious situations, hot zones, as they were? Where? I guess I'm trying to ask: is it more than just sitting there and typing up the story?
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was a broader world where I was out there actually fighting environmental crime like the protagonist in my book. But, it is a lot of keyboard warrior stuff. Okay. I will say I have spent some time in the Pineland Sands, up in northern Minnesota. One of the projects I worked on was the world's largest farm is a potato farm and a potato factory up in northern Minnesota,
Oh.
and it's a bulk of McDonald's French fries comes from northern Minnesota because
Really?
the topography of the land of the land up there is it's shallow, it's sandy soil,
Yeah.
and so potatoes, and especially potatoes that McDonald's wants, are,
Okay.
because kind of uniform size,
Sure.
they grow really well there. And but the downside is they have to be doused in all these chemicals, and it's so green and fun up in the Pineland Sands. It contains the headwaters of the Mississippi. It's a Tasca State Park. All that's so beautiful up there, but underneath it is this kind of toxic threat, and they spray with helicopters all over the place, and the White Earth Reservation is up there, and they're getting impacted by it. So I spent time up there in that kind of vein, if a quote unquote hot zone. But then the only other time I've kind of been in that world was kind of the impetus for this book was I spent some time in Italy, and we were driving by Mount Vesuvius, and it was smoking. And there was smoke coming out of Mount Vesuvius, and so I asked the driver. I said, "Hey, is it active? In case the volcano goes off, I want to know what's going on." And he said, "No, that's the mafia." And I didn't understand what he was talking about. And I had to do some research. It turns out that the mafia in southern Italy for decades, because the Environmental Union has way more stringent chemical regulations than we do here in America. The mafia approaches these companies in the EU and says, "You have toxic waste that you can't offload. We'll take them off your hands for a price, and then we'll dump them on Vesuvius, and we'll set it on fire." So that was kind of how the other kind of hot zone that I experienced.
See, I had no idea that was based on facts on real life. I had no idea.
Decades.
That's pretty terrifying.
Yes,
wow.
It is. Although here in America, we don't want to be too far afield, but we just allow them to do it, kind of within the bounds of our laws.
Sure.
So we don't need a mafia here to be the middleman.
Oh, right.
It just happens.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just write awful laws, and then you can do awful things. No. So that would lead me to just asking. At that point, when you saw Vesuvius, did you think I have to write about this, but not as a journalist? It's time to write my book, or because I'm not sure if many people know this, but this apparently is your first novel.
Yep.
And I will say, I certainly hope not your last. Did you get were you motivated at that point?
Yeah. Was that the
writing?
linchpin?
Yeah.
That's a great question, and I'll say it first on the top. I always wanted to be a novelist. I grew up reading what everyone else read: Stephen King, Michael Crichton, Tom Clancy. That was all the stuff that was the fodder of my youth. And like music, we have our heroes, and we start bands based upon our music. Well, these are I always wanted to be a novelist, and I've written several manuscripts over the years on various topics, and never made up to snuff. But that was just a thing I did on the side. And for this was just kind of another one of those ideas. Oh, I like this. And it came from this trip to Italy where I got really lucky. My wife was having her sabbatical in Italy, and she was smart enough to say, for a month, she was smart enough to say, "I don't want to travel around. I want to go to one town." Okay. And so she chose Positano, which is in the Amalfi Coast, southern Italy. And so we spent a month in Positano and Naples, and I really got to know the area. And then that kind of event with seeing Vesuvius and the work that I had done and not knowing it, that kind of that was a little spark. And then another spark was sitting in Positano, and it's a cliff, these sheer cliffs that look over this glittering blue Tyrrhenian Sea, and it's a playground for the rich. And so this whole bay is below us, full of these super yachts, and you'd sit there and look at them. And I'm a fan of genre stuff and James Bond movies all on through, like I said, Armageddon. And I would look at these super yachts, and I'm like, which one's going to explode? Yeah. One of these boats has to explode. It has to blow up. That's how a movie starts, and it has to blow up. And then at the same time, I was reading. This is all serendipitous, and it's all true. I was reading Bill Janovitz. He's a musician who had the band Buffalo Tom. He still has the band Buffalo Tom. Okay. But he wrote a book, and he's been kind of a scribe about the Rolling Stones. He wrote a book about the Rolling Stones called The 50 Songs That Tell the Story of the Rolling Stones. Okay. And I'm reading the book in Positano, and I opened the chapter to the Midnight Rambler, and it was that song was written in Positano.
No way.
Nick and Keith were on vacation, and they were in Positano, and they wrote this really dark song about a serial killer in the sunniest place in the world, and it all just kind of convened in my head.
Wow.
And then, not to really jump ahead here in what we're talking about, but just to answer your question, I had a nonfiction book I was writing. I had an agent at the time who had brought me a whistleblower on a biofuel plant fraud. And there's been this big epidemic of biofuel fraud where people, fleece the federal government for billions and billions of dollars. In this particular case, it was 50 million, blah, blah, blah. It all ends up. But I ended up, because the EPA and EPA special agents, which even though I'd worked in the environmental movement for a long time, had no knowledge that there was actual EPA special agents with guns, sidearms out walking the beat. I had no idea what was happening. I ended up interviewing a bunch of EPA special agents in this book process to get this nonfiction book. It ended up not happening. But so suddenly it all came together in my head, like, wow, I can actually, it was an FBI agent at the beginning, this alphabet soup, the FBI, whatever. Wow, I actually have an ability to put maybe something no one's ever read about, an EPA special agent, in this same kind of spy thriller genre.
So cool.
Yeah,
that is just amazing.
And Sophie was right there in front of you. Exactly. That's the EPA agent, Sophie. So I was gonna ask you if, like, how much real life experience is behind this book, but it sounds like you witnessed so much of a foundation for the book was there. I'm just blown away by all the kind of the coincidences and the way the literary planets aligned. For you to get going there.
No, you're exactly right. And one thing that happened too was, I interviewed this EPA special agent. She actually had been the special agent in charge of the Los Angeles district. Chris Sigford was her name. And I interviewed a ton of people for this book, but she was the one that really struck me. And she's actually kind of this shadow protagonist that I used for this. But she has a fascinating story, because she would talk stories about how she'd be in a boat, like one of her first jobs, she'd be in a boat in the Ohio River with her partner, and all they would do all night long was motor up and down the Ohio River, looking for somebody shooting some green goo out of a tube into the Ohio River.
Wow.
And they would go knock on the door, and they would, arrest the polluter. And the more you talk to her and the more you talk to EPA special agents, you get this view into a world that is really unlike any other federal agent, because by law, they have a unique federal ability to, if they see an environmental crime, that's the thing, they go through the door, they can then pursue any subsequent environmental or federal crime after that, whether it be drug trafficking, kidnapping, weapons, anything. And so they have to have all this knowledge about tax law, about fraud.
I suppose.
They're basically, the smartest federal agents out there.
Yeah. That very, very interesting.
And probably the least known about or spoken about. Recognized.
Especially in farm country, like we're in the middle of America where we're at, they're the most loathed ones. No one wants to see an EPA agent on their farm field. Right. So we keep them at arm's length around.
Interesting. By the way, I love the Italian name for the antagonist for your
Ramingo Mezzanotte.
Ramingo
Mezzanotte.
And
so good.
Are you I don't want you to give any spoilers on the book or anything like that. Are we gonna possibly hear more from Sophie? I haven't finished the book. Are we gonna hear more from Sophie or Il Ramingo Mezzanotte?
So I won't spoil for you, but everyone dies.
The end.
It's a planned 3-book series with my publisher. And so hopefully, I'm working on the second one right now. I won't give too much away. Sophie is the planned protagonist through the 3 books. The next book, I believe, and I'm working through it right now, is going to be set in South Dakota, next door, in our neighbors, South Dakota, where it's my native home state. And
Awesome.
Very good.
It like I say, I'm not finished with it. So far into it, what am I now? Maybe around 60 pages or something like that. it's a screen flipper. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm
Reading
loving
it Kindle, of course. That's why it's a page turner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Screen
No, I
flipper.
appreciate you saying that. That makes me feel really good. I really do. It's very gratifying.
Yeah,
And, you sit there and spend a couple years on something, and then you put it on the world, and you hope people enjoy it. So I really appreciate that.
Well, William Kent didn't he?
William
did.
Kent Kruger
Yeah.
He liked it a
dynamite review. Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
What a sweet man, and what a great writer. He's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
He writes some great stuff indeed. So we do as Minnesota Medleys, we have to ask you what's your Minnesota thing? Do you enjoy getting outdoors? Are you into snowshoeing, ice fishing? Do you go up to the lake? What's your Minnesota fix?
What's your favorite hot dish?
Yeah, right.
So that question I'll answer last because I actually am not prepared to answer, so I have to think about it. But I have prepped for this question.
Okay.
And so I'll start from the top. So growing up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which I don't know, not many people know, but is regarded as the outer ring suburb of Minneapolis.
Yes,
suburb. Yeah.
And that's how when me and my friends growing up treated it because there's really outside of doing stuff outside, it's pretty boring to grow up in South Dakota. So we came here all the time. And
yeah.
So,
I
was at First Avenue a lot.
Nice.
I got to see Liz Fair do her first show there.
Fun.
With Guyville. I got to see Pearl Jam with Trip Shakespeare. Can't believe I followed that name because I was a big Trip Shakespeare guy. I followed him all over the place.
Yeah,
and so I've always had a spot in my heart for Minnesota and always wanted to live here. And then when we got the opportunity to live here, it just kind of was a dream. And so to tell you what I do now, I love to fly fish for muskies, which you can do from Lake Harriet, which is right by my house here in Minneapolis, all the way up to the border. Although it's the fish of 10,000 casts, and my arms are getting older and more tired.
Right.
And so, and I'm not a great fisherman, but I enjoy the endeavor.
Yeah.
And then it's really strange, but one of the places that when I was growing up in South Dakota that I never went to was the North Shore. And since we lived here, we've spent a lot of time in the North Shore, and specifically Lutsen.
Yeah.
And we're skiers, so we like to ski. But the whole area is fantastic. I love it.
Isn't it?
So, to kind of circle around your question.
Yeah.
I love First Avenue. To me, it's an icon of the country. There's only one other room, I think, in the world or in the country that does shows as well, and that's the 930 Club in Washington, D.C., where I lived for a while. But it is the gold standard for seeing live music.
Yeah.
And
it is.
Hot dish is a crazy question because I'm basically going to tell you I'm a tater tot hot dish guy. I mean, we don't – it's funny. We're cooks in our house. We had a restaurant a long time ago. We had a catering business. We have not mastered the hot dish yet. Almost, I can tell you why. It's daunting. It is. It feels like I'm going to be judged, and I'm kind of scared by it.
It's a high, lofty reputation. Yeah,
it is. And first thing you got to remember is, yes, you will be judged for it. So that your instincts are correct.
Yeah.
But it is as long as you end up full. You know? But and that's the tater tot hot dish really. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, you really can't. You really can't.
Well,
can I ask a question?
Please.
So I've been a lifelong Vikings fan. Obviously, we didn't have professional sports in South Dakota.
Sure.
Okay.
Is hating the Packers a Minnesota thing, or do we have to endure all the Packer fans that live in Minnesota? Or third question, are you guys Packer fans and I'm insulting you right now?
Oh no,
totally not a Packer fan. I will tell you that.
Hey, just hit stop recording if you will.
Yeah.
That'd be great. No, I can't speak for all Minnesota Vikings fans. I think it's just you're supposed to dislike them.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against the Packers. I like a publicly owned team personally.
Yeah.
Jess has been to eat at Lambeau Field a few times and said they have great food there.
I've never been to a game. This is always off season. I saw them. They do these great things for kids with bikes, and they donate bikes, and they ride them across the street and stuff from where they've got their training and all that. But I mean, I just always grew up in the battle, you know, where when we would go to Wisconsin to relatives' homes, they would always be talking about the Vikings and, you know, and it's like, oh, come on, you know, but you know, my sister defected. She really did. She married a guy from Wisconsin, and she broke the news to the family one year at Christmas and said, I've converted.
And that was the last Christmas Jess spoke to her, and that was over 20 years ago. It's really, I think that's a little extreme, but
you know, it's one of the, it is what it is, you know. Purple runs in our blood, I guess. So
that's right.
That's true.
Are you are a Vikings fan?
Oh, I have been, from day one. So,
okay.
Like I said, you know, you grow up in South Dakota, and so what happens is, the state's bisected by the Missouri River and by time zones. So East River is all Minnesota sports, and West River is all Colorado sports.
Okay. Totally makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, you are going to be busy on the 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Terzo. Speaking of Italian places, Italian restaurant.
Was that on purpose?
It was. Well, a couple reasons. One, it's 3 blocks from my house.
Perfect.
Oh, nice.
When I first moved here, I actually had a line item on my credit card from Terzo.
Nice.
It was not good for my waistline and or the bank account.
Sure.
You know, it being a great Italian restaurant, and the Broders family, you know, being so special here in this part of Minneapolis, serving Italian food, it just made sense. And, so that's where we're going to do it.
That's
excellent.
Awesome. Well, if anyone is interested in going to the book release, it's at 2221 West 50th Street at Terzo in Minneapolis. That's from 4 until 6 on the 19th. This has been just
so fun,
so much fun for us.
Me too.
I really do want to encourage people to check out doncarauthor.com. Great photo. 2 R's.
Yes,
Carr with
2
2
R's. Yes.
Thank you. Good point. DONCARR author.com. Great photo on your website. You've got a good look for a novelist. You just do. When I saw this picture, I told Jess, I would bet $58 he's got leather patches on his elbows. I mean,
I did.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
That's 54 years of clean living right there.
Right there.
Really,
there we go.
Perfect.
There we go.
Well, it's a very cool site. It's been really, really great talking to you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Us.
Great podcast. Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
And Midnight Ramblers, the book, go out and get it, everyone. It's just excellent.
Absolutely.
Don Carr, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.
So fun.
I really enjoyed that interview. I think he was just a perfect first author for Minnesota Medleys.
Well, and it's a first for him too with his first novel. I mean, so just really fun to, I think, for us to have that experience.
Just remain blown away by all the circumstances, events, all the things that came into play that got him writing this book. He wanted to be a novelist, but it's like it was just being said, now is the time.
Yes, exactly.
And we're very glad he did it. So again, Don Carr, the book Midnight Rambler.
His website we should mention.
Don
Carr, author.
and it is Don Carr with 2 R's.
C's. Oh, 2 C's. Where am I coming up with that?
Your turn to goof up.
Right?
Yeah. DONCARR author.com.
Yes.
Cool website. Look under stuff. Look at some of the videos. There's some really funny stuff. And again, his book release is on the 19th from 4 until 6 at Terzo in Minneapolis. Terzo is located at 2221 West 50th Street. We, of course, want to extend our thanks again to Janelle and Krista, who are literary publicists with the Blue Cottage Agency. Check them out at bluecottageagency.com, representing and promoting literary arts. They do very good work there. Our next episode is going to be coming up close to Christmas.
Yes.
We're not going to release something right on Christmas, not even in the week of Christmas.
No, it's a whirlwind month.
A whirlwind month. Some of our listeners may know that Jess and I are also musicians. Jess is an accomplished and wonderful violist.
My goodness, thank you.
I saw a way at the violin. And we do have a duet that we call ourselves Accent. And we were thinking for our Christmas episode that we're going to release on the 17th. Is it the 17th we're going to release it on?
Well, it might come out the next day on the 18th. Are we
There
going to
you
release
go.
it on a Sunday? Yeah, we'll be releasing it the next day.
Yeah, the 18th.
Yeah.
Sorry. The 18th of December will be our Christmas episode. We'll talk a little bit about Christmases past and present and all of that. And we're going to play our instruments for you as well. Share a few tunes because Christmas for us is it is a time of music, both somber and celebratory and all of it lovely. And it happens to be one of my favorite things to do is to create and perform music with my beautiful wife. So I'm looking forward to that episode. We hope that you will too. Again, our thanks to Don Carr.
Carr.
Correct. Grab his book, Midnight Rambler. It's an absolute blast. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.